I don't think we've quite seen a former president in the way in which we saw him this week out and about in the capital city of Nairobi. We'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. But so, Jamila, what was happening? What went on here?
Okay, this was the Jubilee headquarters in Kileleshwa, outside it. And earlier that day, Jeremiah Kioni, there's been the push and pull about the leadership of the party with the Jeremiah Kioni side, and there's one that is led by Kanini Kega. So Jeremiah Kioni went to the party headquarters early in the day, and then Kanini Kega had planned to have a press conference at the same venue at around 12:30. Then Kioni locked himself in. Of course, the way the area is, there's a main entrance, a main gate with a barrier before you come in, and then into the estate, and then where the headquarters are. So he locked himself in with some supporters. That's Jeremiah Kioni. So Kanini Kega came with a few members of parliament, including Aden Keinan, Rachel Koki, Sabina Chege. They got in through the main gate, the main barrier, but could not access the headquarters. So in fact, Jeremiah Kioni, I think, or some of his people had parked a car there to really block entrance into the building. And then now there were people there not allowing anybody in. So there are also those now who came with the Kega. And then now there was that war of words, wakaanza kurushana maneno hapa na pale. Then tear gas was lobbed by the police because now this is a residential area. Now there was all these loud noises, tear gas ikarushwa, majirani wakaanza kulalamika. So it was all so chaotic. Then I think after they realized that this is not going anywhere, Kanini Kega and his group left. Then Uhuru Kenyatta came, former President Uhuru Kenyatta, and we are told he came after a phone call from Jeremiah Kioni telling him, kumenuka hapa. There are problems. And of course, these pictures and the videos had now sambazikaed all over social media. Even we had had it in our earlier bulletins, that there was something going on at the Jubilee headquarters with the tear gas and running battles. And then, of course, former President Uhuru Kenyatta came in. And by the time he was coming, police had denied anyone entrance from the main gate to Koko Barrier. But they did allow him to come in. And then he went inside. Jeremiah Kioni opened the door and he went in and he spoke and all that. But then now, waliambiwa waondoke. So after all that had happened, they were told, you cannot continue having the party headquarters here because of what has happened. There was chaos, there was disturbance. It's against the agreements that we had when you signed the lease to this place. So this is what it took to bring the former president out. And this was just, I think, hours after he had received some peace award, because of his efforts here in Ethiopia. Yeah. And then akajipata katika sokomoko hili.
Yeah. And so all of this sokomoko is over the fight for Jubilee Party, the leadership of the same. This is after the election, with a section of MPs breaking away and saying that they, wish to work with the Kenya Kwanza coalition and the administration. But the events that we saw with the former president and he is the party leader. He's the coalition chair of Azimio. It's been a long fight coming. There's been a history of events to how we got to the former president, and we'll talk a little bit about his interaction with the police as well. So how did we get here, Sam? Take us through that.
I think before you do that, it would be very interesting from her narration to just listen to what the former president wanted as soon as he got to those Jubilee offices.
Sisi hakuna kitu tunauliza, hakuna kwa mtu tunaenda, hakuna cha mtu tunauliza, tunataka tu haki yetu. Na sisi kama chama tutafuata kulingana na sheria zetu, na hata wakati walijaribu kutunyang'anya chama, tulienda na tukafuata ratiba ya kwenda kotini mpaka tukapata haki yetu. Kwa nini sasa muje mtusumbue?
Tunataka haki yetu tu. End of quote. Look at the image behind the former president, and you see the dove there.
Yeah, it's behind you as well.
Yeah.
Just so you know.
Okay. Also, just was it early in the week when he was receiving that award? There was a dove.
Yeah.
Na amesema tunataka haki. Hatuna ubaya na mtu. But then, this has been a long way coming because it started off as soon as the last election, and of course the disgruntled effect that brought to especially the party, having lost the election to the Kenya Kwanza Alliance. But then it intensified at the start of the year. You may recall that on 20th of January, there was a visit to Harambee Annex. This is a section of members of parliament from the Jubilee party going to meet the deputy president, that is Rigathi Gachagua. Then after that, on the 2nd of February, there was a notice that was issued of a National Executive Council meeting that was to happen in Nakuru, and it actually went on to happen on the 10th of February, but on the 8th of February, 2 days before that meeting, there was a meeting of some 30 members of parliament from the Jubilee party at State House. They were meeting President William Ruto and the deputy president. Of course, not so much was said about the details, the nitty-gritties of the discussions there, apart from saying that they wanted to be respected and, of course, cooperate with the government. Then on the 13th of February, that's 3 days after the meeting of the Jubilee National Executive Committee, of course, it didn't include Jeremiah Kioni, it didn't include David Murathe, who is the vice chairperson of the party, and other officials. They wrote to the Register of Political Parties communicating the resolutions of that meeting, and a letter was written on the 14th of February. Of course, that is the Jeremiah Kioni and David Murathe appealing against that decision at the Political Parties Disputes Tribunal. Then on April 19th, that's when the tribunal gave its ruling. But you may be interested to understand what exactly happened and what is the judgment of the Political Parties Disputes Tribunal that now Kanini Kega and company are relying on. They said that the letter of the Register of Political Parties is null and void for the simple reason that it had not factored in the internal mechanisms of dispute resolution of the Jubilee Party. Then it says that the tribunal declined to quash the decisions that were arrived at by the National Executive Council. That is a meeting that was held in Nakuru, and that the dispute should be subjected to internal mechanisms. That is why the tribunal said they cannot intervene at this stage, bearing in mind that those processes have not been concluded. So the tribunal declined to give orders to avoid prejudice into that process. And I want to quote what they said, that we do not at this stage have jurisdiction to consider and grant any prayers for nullification of the notice of meeting, the agenda and the resolutions and the letter to the Register of Political Parties. So they didn't want to touch that because it's a matter that's still active at the internal mechanism of the Jubilee Party. But now, the actions that are being nullified by the tribunal, the actions of the Register of Political Parties, this is what she had done, that is, and Nderito. She acknowledged the NEC's meeting and resolutions, that is the National Executive Council. She also stated that the NEC meeting was properly convened, and she had asked to be updated on internal party processes that would follow after that. And therefore, the tribunal was feeling that she had already expressed herself on that particular matter, and that's why that was nullified. Now, the judgment found that the registrar did not hear from Kioni and company, that her finding was procedurally unfair, and that the Register of Political Parties violated the Political Parties Act and sections of the Constitution, and therefore that letter is null and void. Of course, the tribunal has 3 members, chaired by Desma Nungo. And Yvonne, of course, now coming from that decision, you come and hear all these are the members of the NEC, the likes of Sabina Chege they are talking about, but also even the president, the former president himself, saying that we have our own internal mechanism that we are supposed to be following, and we'll be following, and of course we'll be hearing that voice shortly. Yeah,
so let's listen to Sabina Chege on the same issue.
I also want to appeal to the party leader. You are our leader. It is important that you call all of us together. Let's not other people, members of other political parties have seen ODM. They're the ones who are harassing us. They harassed us in parliament. They took our positions. They have harassed us. They took our commissioner's position. Every communication that is done by Jubilee, it is disregarded. They do their own communication. We have been very patient. And we love this party, and we want this party to work. So I want to ask Kioni and the team to allow our internal dispute resolution They go, present themselves, and allow the party members to make decisions. This is not an individual's party.
So, you know, it seems they're all sort of saying the same thing, but then can't seem to agree on that, because from what it sounds like, what the Political Parties Dispute Tribunal has said, what former President Uhuru Kenyatta is saying, Sabina Chege, you know, and others in terms of following the law, that this is going to be resolved in the party. However, there's the big question of, so what is the status quo now? Who then is the holder of the office in the interim while they sort out these matters internally, including, you know, when you take a look at, so they say the NEC was properly convened with those members. They must have an internal dispute resolution committee. But then now, Elinas, so who are the party officials? And if they can't even agree on that, how do they then begin to say, okay, so let's discuss this internally, right? Let's form these tribunals, let's form these subcommittees, let's resolve these issues. And also, isn't Jubilee just going through the motions politically? I mean, you know, we can talk about the Political Parties Dispute Tribunal, we can talk about the Registrar of Political Parties, but isn't Jubilee just going the way that other political parties have gone in this country? It served its purpose. It was a coalition in 2013 of TNA and URP, brought Uhuru Kenyatta to power. It was a fully fledged unified party in 2017, got Uhuru re-elected for a second term. And now really, what's its use in Kenyan, you know, political scene?
I think, Yvonne, the answer lies in the statement by Sabina Chege there, who is a member of one faction, the other faction, that is the Kanini Kega faction, asking the party leader, who is in the faction of Jeremiah Kioni, to call us together. Honestly, this is what happens. And has happened, and you've rightly pointed out, has happened after a party leaves power. This is the PNU space. This is the KANU 2002 space. PNU 2000. Punu.
I'm sorry, yes. I just can never get over how late President Mwai Kibaki didn't even know the name of the party.
No, he didn't. He knew about it in the last minute. And this just points again to how weak our party structures are. This fight will fizzle out at some point. We can't even tell how it's going to end. Because what happens with our politics is after the election, the winners of the election get to win more support even from the supposed opposition. We do not have principled opposition politics. There is this scramble to join the winner. And that's exactly what is happening. A section of Jubilee has joined the Kenya Kwanza, and a small part of it is still fighting for dear life. And they brought out the big gun today in former President Uhuru Kenyatta. Very rare to see a former president coming out to actively take part in politics. Not even former President, the late President Moi or the late President Kibaki ever stepped out to take a position politically in the party, even in the parties that they represented. Of course, there'll be occasional jabs at how their time was better than the time of their successors. And for Moi, I only remember that it was actually a very funny comment he made. He just said, "Hata mimi naona dio yenu siku hizi amekonda." You know, at the height of when the National Rainbow Coalition was making a lot of fun of him, you know, stay home and we'll show you how to
to run the country.
Yes, but I wanted us to look at what exactly then the context of Uhuru's appearance in public also states. Let's face it, he has taken a lot of heat in recent times. because of his differences with his former deputy, now president. Remember, that fight has continued from the pre-campaigns period way into the election, and after the election now the victor is his former deputy, and they have taken the battle to him, accusing him of sponsoring opposition demonstrations and things like that. Yeah. So I think it was just a matter of time, because before, in one way or the other, Uhuru comes out to defend either himself or his family, which has also been taking quite a beating from the current administration. We've seen former First Lady, the mother of former President Mama Ngina, getting into a spat with leaders of the current administration. And it's only a matter of time before we see Uhuru Kenyatta stepping into the fray. Yeah,
and you know, I think for what it's worth, Kenya is in a unique space now. We're getting to see a former president a little more active. So our two retired presidents who are now no longer with us, at the time they retired, you know, were fairly advanced in age and you know, were ready to retire into the sunset and do that. That's a little different with President Uhuru Kenyatta. He's obviously much younger. And for whether you think it's a good thing, it's a bad thing, it's positive, it's negative, he should retire, he should not be involved in politics, so he has every right to exercise his political rights. On whichever side you know, you are on this issue, for me it's just an interesting, maybe I can call it experiment, to see what a former president cannot do, what he says, the demeanor, how does he interact with people? For instance, you know, I want us to listen to him, you know, when he was talking with, you know, the police who were there, you know, and all of the supporters and otherwise. And he was even talking about the so-called police brutality. Kuja kupiga kijana huyu, amepigwa. This was in response to a journalist who got injured in the melee there. So let's just listen to this and take a look at what our country is experiencing now with how a former president is now interacting with us.
Kuja kupiga kijana kama huyu amepigwa, kumuumiza. Jameni, kijana ambaye hana shida isipokuwa kulinda haki yake, na polisi wanasimamia watu wakipiga mali ya mtu, kwa sababu hata hii sio nyumba yetu. Hii ni kukodesha, tumekodesha jameni. Hii ni mali ya wengine. Ya? Kuna majirani, mnawatupia tear gas ndio mchukue nyumba kwa nguvu. Hiyo sio haki. Na mimi nawauliza maofisa wetu wa polisi, jameni, fuateni haki. Na tumewaona sasa mara mingi sasa, mkienda barabara ya kukosa kufuata haki. Tendeni haki. Muliapa ya kwamba mutailinda inchi, mutailinda wananchi na mutalinda katiba. Tafadhali fanyeni hivyo na msikubali kutumiwa vibaya. Na waomba kwa heshima, kwa sababu mkitumiwa vibaya, mwaelekea sasa kuja kuharibu nchi yetu.
So he was, you know, once the commander-in-chief of the armed forces. You know, I know our constitution is different now with the police and who they're answerable to, but this is now a former president who's also taking issue with police action and the manner in which they're responding to situations in the country. An interesting space, right, Sam?
It is very interesting, and especially even when you see the images, the practical images that he arrives with his hands held at the back, then he relaxes, then he waves them to leave, tells them to leave, and they actually leave. I don't know, he must be quite powerful. But now listening to him also, you get to feel the way he's speaking, he's almost sounding quite helpless. I don't know whether he is exactly helpless, but for a political party that just over 7 months ago was the ruling party, to an extent that now it is having to fight for its all because its former party leader has come to the Jubilee House to salvage it. And I say that because the law, that is the Retirement Benefits Act for presidential benefits, and Section 4 talks about circumstances under which benefits may not be paid. This is according to the law as so far set up. And it says one of the reasons why the retirement benefits for presidents may not be paid is when that person has held office or actively engaged in the activities of any political party contrary to the provisions of Section 6, subsection 1. And obviously, he's required to hold no office after leaving office 6 months after that, meaning the 6 months expired on, believe, 13th of March. So it's just over a month ago. And now he should not be holding any political office, not getting involved in political activities. And this is one of the laws that is being cited by some of the, obviously, persons that may be against what he's doing. A retired president shall not hold office in any political party for more than 6 months after ceasing to hold office as a president. But now, when you read that and contrast it with the Constitution, let me just get that so that that is Article 38 about political rights. The Constitution says that every citizen is free to make political choices, which includes the right to form or participate in forming a political party, to participate in the activities of or recruit members for a political party, or to campaign for a political party or the cause. And obviously, as every citizen, the former president is a citizen. So, but the law currently as set up talks about should not participate. So for me, I think this is an area that is actually prime for legal challenge, probably at the High Court, to weigh the rights as provided by the Constitution versus such a law that has been set up by Parliament. And also, it cannot be lost on you on what could have been the motivation to coming up with such a law at a time there was political scores being settled, especially if you remember this is a law that was passed in 2003. Who was the former president that time? Daniel Moi. Who was the president that time? It was Mwai Kibaki. There has been several amendments going into this act, but obviously it remains as it is. But then finally, I find it interesting that Sabina Chege and company are still fighting for the soul of Jubilee. And this is not for any other reason. Remember that they are saying that they want to be recognized as an independent, as a parliamentary party in the House, because once you have more than 5% of the entire House, then you're free to be registered to be recognized as a parliamentary party. And so they want to dissociate themselves from the Azimio movement or the Azimio coalition. They become an independent party within Parliament, and therefore they are recognized as a parliamentary party because they meet the threshold. And with that, they can have the leader of the Jubilee party as a parliamentary party. They can have a whip of the Jubilee party as a parliamentary party. And therefore, despite the fact that the Azimio coalition is axing Sabina Chege from her role as a deputy minority whip, she may actually get it as a parliamentary whip or a parliamentary leader of the Jubilee party if it is recognized by Parliament. But the presence of Kioni, the presence of President Kenyatta is a hindrance for them on what they want to achieve. And
even the place of Jubilee or where it belongs, whether in Azimio, which is the original coalition, or the coalition it was a part of during the last elections, and members of Parliament who were elected under Jubilee were elected under the Azimio umbrella or Kenya Kwanza, where they seem to be aligning themselves to. About 30 of them have been to State House and showing support for the president, is also a matter that has come up in the bipartisan talks, which haven't started yet, because one of the reasons is the presence of a Jubilee member of Parliament, Aden Keynan, in the Kenya Kwanza committee, in terms of Azimio complaining that why is he there, and he's supposed to be, he was elected under Jubilee, which was under Azimio, at least in the 2022 elections. So those talks have stalled because of that. So the party leaders, or the leaders, that is President William Ruto and Raila Odinga, are supposed to decide, so what happens next? Are we going to allow them to stay? Because the other side is complaining about Kosing, who I think the party today, KUP, has officially signed an agreement with UDA, belongs. So fighting for the heart and soul of Jubilee, for various reasons, not really as fighting for the heart of soul of Jubilee as a party.
I don't know about soul. I think I would speak of a shell. You know. Jubilee is not what it was in 2013.
No.
Jubilee, remember, is a creature of Uhuru. That is Uhuru and Ruto. It is a vehicle that was founded on grievances of the two leaders who felt you know, they are being victimized and they are being taken to ICC. And so the only way is to hold together and even go for power together. And remember, that has changed a lot. I mean, they have since parted ways. And Jubilee will continue to struggle to retain its original form because it's no longer there. But again, we need to look at the bigger picture of our state of multipartyism and how it has taken long for us to settle down. We are yet to get a clear path in terms of how parties operate and what the principles guiding those parties should be. Because former President Uhuru Kenyatta is now lamenting about the state of, saying this is our party, we have a right to protect it. And it will be remembered that as official leader of opposition under the old constitution, he did something that was never done in the Commonwealth before he did it, by leading the official opposition to support the government.
Yeah.
And so the official opposition, KANU, that time in 2007, said, no, we won't have a candidate. Our candidate will be the president. You know, that alone also was something that was a big blow to the spirit of democracy, especially in the Westminster sense. You can't do that. You should then have resigned as chairman of KANU or dissolve KANU and join the party. So along the way, there'll be very few saints in as far as the wellness of our democracy is concerned. A lot of these players, at one point or the other, have hit some serious body blows on the wellness of our democratic practice. And there's something Sam had said earlier that I just want to quickly comment on. The rule on former presidents participating in politics after 6 months. There's one thing I remember about the writing of the Constitution of Kenya 2010. The writing of the Constitution of Kenya 2010 was done with former President Moi and Jomo Kenyatta in the side mirror. There should never be anything and anybody like them. Capable of exercising power in the way they did. Now, in his heydays, even at the time he retired, former President Moi was very, very powerful. Now imagine him having the right to run political party affairs 6 months into his retirement. And you know, he was a political professor like he was known. He had the capacity to wreak havoc. So I think the drafters also were thinking of how safe do we keep the landscape. So if you have retired and you're on this retirement benefit, so it helps that you now, leave the scene and allow others to play the role. And this is also good for just good order. But when you look at other jurisdictions, you look at the American example, you see that former presidents are still very active members of their parties. They come in during the national conventions.
Obama is even, did that for Biden now.
Yeah, but that is in properly set up democratic environments. Here it's a bit difficult. It's a bit different. So, and that's why former President Uhuru Kenyatta will come under a lot of criticism for participating and continuing to hold a position in Azimio and Jubilee.
As we talk about retirement, there's also many people who continue to be in government who are receiving retirement benefits either as being vice president. I mean, even Raila Odinga as being, former prime minister. But they're still there. So there's a lot of things to consider. But one of the things Musalia Mudavadi was vice president. So you start to think about these things. One of the things I always ask when you see all this, happening in parties is when your chama wako wapi? Like, the people, the party members, where are they? Do they exist? And I'm not talking about these supporters of either side who are sort of whipped up to come and, support one faction or another. We never ever hear from party members who say, hey, you guys are not running our party in the way in which, we decided in our articles, in our memoranda, in all of those things. where are the party members?
You said our party.
Chama chetu.
As who?
Yeah, truly. They are not the owners of the party. How do you see when you're chama? All right.